But time in general is going to do some time. Time is going to do time. I should have a timer. I think I'm going to put a little timer count because I've said time so many times. Hi, hello, and welcome to the Cozy Little Book Club. I'm your host, Taylor, and this is Boo. Ooh, right on cue, Boo, good job. Okay, he's not a paid actor. Anyway, thanks so much for joining us. Okay, so Boo's gone, but I'm so excited to tell you guys that I am back in my romance era. Well, this kind of book is not exactly super romantic, but in theory, and not in reality, it is a little romantic. And the book I'm talking about is An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. Now that Boo is gone, let's get into the book. The story starts off from the perspective of Roy Hamilton, who reflects on his love and life of he and his newlywed wife, Celestial, before tragedy strikes. The story is told mostly through their letters of their correspondence to each other over the years and a few flashbacks to really put things into perspective. Before we move on, I do want to say that there is a little bit of a trigger warning because this book has some sensitive subjects such as wrongful imprisonment, abortion, and rape. And I just wanted to give you that heads up before we move on, just so you know if you do decide to read this book, these are some of the themes that are involved. So back to the story. Roy comes from a small town in Louisiana, while Celestial comes from a wealthy family in Atlanta. And despite their vastly different upbringings, it's as if these two were fated to be together. That is until one fateful night. No, seriously. While visiting Roy's family in LOE, Louisiana, shortly after their first wedding anniversary, the two decide to spend some quality time together and get a hotel room for the night. If you know what I mean. Unfortunately, they find that will be the last time that they will have any alone time for the next couple of years. Roy is accused of rape by an elderly woman at the same hotel that they're staying at. And being that they're in a small town, things are not looking up for Roy. In fact, things take a turn for the worse and he gets sentenced to 12 years of prison. Talk about a twist, okay? Was not expecting that. It's obviously a tough time for him, but it's also a tough time for Celestial. It's a tough time for his family and everyone around him. Over the years and through their letters, it shows how the two of them have both grown together and separately in this new reality of theirs. But through the flashbacks, it also goes on to show how they became a couple and how their love story came to be, but then also how it went on to become, if that makes sense. It's really hard to explain this story in particular without going too deep because there are so many layers of it and there's a lot of emotion behind it, while obviously being wrongfully accused in prison, which is never a good place to be. There are reputations for certain prisons, and obviously some prisons are worse than others. So it's very difficult for Roy, who has daily battles on the inside, while Celestial is trying to stay committed and stay down for him while moving forward with her own life. So while Roy is in prison, and on the outside, Celestial is doing great. Like, everything is really on the up and up for her. She makes handmade dolls that a lot of politicians and people like that really like. And together, her and Roy decided that they were going to open up a doll shop. On the outside, she's trying to pursue that dream. But with her success, as you can imagine, she gets a lot busier. So the communication via letters, phone calls, and visits between her and Roy really becomes strained. And as you can imagine, while her life is propelling forward on the outside, Roy is happy for his wife, but he's also feeling a little upset. As you can imagine, you thought you had these dreams with your wife and she's continuing on, trying to keep it going, but you're just stuck while everyone else around you is moving forward. He's feeling a little resentment. That's partly where the separation and distance comes from within their relationship. But while things are going on the outside, things are also happening on the inside for Roy. For instance, he meets some people who have a really lasting impact on him while he's in prison. Things that really shake his foundation to the core and really change his life forever. Years go by, and fortunately, Roy doesn't have to fulfill his entire 12-year sentence. Instead, he gets 5 years after they find some evidence that says that he was not the one who raped that older woman. And that's crazy. And that really says a testament to our legal system and the he said, she said. Not that you shouldn't believe survivors, but it's a really slippery slope. With him being out, he's really happy to get back to his wife and move forward in the way that they had planned originally. But things have changed drastically. So something I didn't mention before is that this book is actually not only written through the perspective of Roy and Celestial, but it's also told through the perspective of Celestial's childhood best friend, Andre. Andre is a pivotal character who kind of stays in the background, and he was actually initially who introduced Celestial and Roy to each other. But he plays a bigger part. I won't say how, but I do want to throw that out there. I mean, he was actually in their wedding as her best man. Ultimately, I can't say that this story had an ending that she might have wanted, but it is the ending that it needed to have. And it's not a bad ending. It's just an ending that it needed to have. Okay, so now that we're done with the summary, let's get into what I did like and what I didn't like about the book. I would say that what I loved about this book is it mostly being written from the perspective of the letters between Celestial and Roy. I thought that was really beautiful, and I think it got more of the emotion from both of them and hearing their letters to each other. And I thought that was really beautiful and emotional. And I can't act like I didn't cry maybe once or twice while reading this. And I think that adding the past reflections, the flashbacks, that really kind of helped really encompass and showcase their love story and how it began and how it unfolded. Anyway, if you didn't notice, I have a thing for letters and journal entries. If you didn't peep that from the first episode from the Parable of the Sower, I really like that style of writing and that kind of perspective from people while I read it. It's as if the character is letting us into more of who they are and why they think the things that they think. I don't know. I just like that. So if you peeped it, shout out to you. I also love that they showcased an HBCU love story. Now, while I didn't go to an HBCU, please save the tomatoes, okay? That doesn't mean I can't love it and support it nonetheless. Like, who doesn't like Black love, and especially if they met on this Black-ass university? Like, I love that for them. I think this book did a great realistic depiction of how time and events in your life can change how you and your partner are throughout your relationship. And that's something that everyone can relate to. Maybe not on a large scale of being wrongfully imprisoned, but time in general is going to do some time. Time is going to do time. I should have a timer. I think I'm going to put a little timer count because I've said time so many times in this freaking video. So I think I'm going to do a little count because that's crazy. But people change and grow every day. And sometimes you might not like some of the changes that people are going through at that time. And that is a real testament to love. And that is a real testament to your love with your partner, how you grow with them, how they change, how you change. I think Tayari did a really good job of really showcasing that. And that's really real life. While we all want an ideal picture perfect love story, that is just not the reality of life. That's not very common. And this book did a really good job of that. Obviously, it was more on a grander scale with there being wrongful imprisonment and prison time separating them. But people do change, people do grow, and sometimes you just don't want to grow with that person anymore. That's just a fact of life. This is definitely coming from an outsider perspective, but I think that showing how that strain of losing someone that you see every day, it strains so many aspects of your life. I think it showed real effect of what would probably be very common from anyone who was separated from their family through the prison system, and especially how difficult it is for someone who is wrongfully imprisoned. Just like a lot of relationships, over time, things can wither away. And while you're trying to keep grasp of the things that held you down for so long, sometimes things can slip through the cracks. Low-key, that was a bar. It was a sad bar, but a bar nonetheless. Sad girl. Now, while I did enjoy this book, I want to say that it still saddens me that there are so many Black men who have been wrongfully incarcerated. Not only does it affect them, it affects their families, and it honestly affects the Black community in a lot of ways. So it was really sad to read about this, no matter how at the end of the story, it was a beautiful story. It's sad for me to read books about Black men going to prison. Obviously, this is up to me. These are books that I read. No one's holding me hostage and telling me that I have to read these books. But I think it's sad that this is a very real reality for a lot of Black men, a lot of Black people. I think it really shows just how messed up our justice system is, and it really makes me annoyed, if I'm being honest, because there are a lot of people who have to deal with these things on a day-to-day basis, and it's really not fair. And while it saddens me, it definitely sheds light. So I would love to read any of those recommendations of really good love stories without trauma, please. Please! So this was my second time actually reading this book. I wanted to reread it so I can kind of have a better glimpse of what I was going to tell you all about it. It was honestly a little bit traumatic to read some of this again, but I really liked it. And so I want to give this book a 4 out of 5 golden bookmarks. I mean, this book has everything. There's love, there's loss, there's grief, there's growth, there's changes, there's revelations, there's discoveries. There's so much in this book that you can get from it, and a lot of things that, to me, help me reflect on the course of love. There's a woman with a very beautiful name. There's a very resilient and determined man. And honestly, let's go back to names, because shout out to Roy. Roy has a Black-ass name, and I love it. His name is Roy Othaniel Hamilton. Like, that is Black as hell, and I am here for it. I should say it's Black American as hell, and I'm Black American, so I really like that Black ass name. So shout out to Tayari for that name, because I love it. And I also love how whimsical Celestial's name is. How beautiful is that? I love it. I think that there's a lot to be gained from this book. Understanding how devastating life events can really shake your trajectory for where you think your life is going to be, but still being resilient and being able to keep it moving through it all really says a lot about the characters of this book. I think it teaches you how to be a better partner, how to be a better parent even, and making tough decisions and sticking with them. Honestly, it's kind of an intense book, but if you haven't noticed, that's kind of my thing. But I love it nonetheless, and I see the beauty in the pain. So with that wraps up another episode of the Cozy Little Book Club. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you all for being here. If you've made it all the way to the end, please leave an emoji with a little stack of books. And if you've read the book, please let me know what you thought about this book, whether you liked it, whether you didn't like it. I want to hear your thoughts. And be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because we will be having new book reviews every other week. Thank you again for tuning in, and I hope you all have a lovely day. And remember, when you open a book, you open your mind. Peace. I'm pissed. Okay, let's try it again. Is it recording? What the fuck? Okay, I'm pissed.